I want to start with 3 cheers for moms in this back to school week. Many of you have conquered daunting lists of specific school supplies, right down to the serial number on those lead pencils. I remember, little post-traumatic stress here. But at our house, we've had 2 days of packing up university students, leaving our nest empty. But it's not the first time, so I'm really okay. It's still a stretching season as the new year begins. And you may be asking yourself, what does my role look like now? What is God's purpose for me? Well, my guest may have an answer for you. I've known Cathie Ostapchuk for over 25 years. It has been a treat to watch her gifts blossom and bless. She has a master's degree in leadership and management, and her ministry focuses on equipping and encouraging women. Wait till you see where that is today. I'm excited, Cath, about what God is doing in and through your life and your big words: clearer, braver, stronger life. You didn't get there overnight, did you?
Right, and to even be able to speak those words now is a huge surprise to me, because I've always been wondering what it would be to be in the middle of my life, to be attached to my purpose. But I spent most of my life trying to drive myself to performance, to try and find that sense of meaning and belonging. And I know it doesn't exist there. It exists in knowing what God created you for.
I noticed in your commentary that you say there's a whole lot of brokenness on the path to this stronger, braver you.
Oh, absolutely. I think every day is a breaking. Every day is a new opportunity to be broken. And it never seems that you are the right girl in the right place at the right time, because the circumstances may not show that things are going in the right trajectory. So to know that God has anointed you, has called you before time to partner in his kingdom purposes is really what keeps you looking to him all the time, because at some point in the day, our own gifts and abilities run out, and that's the opportunity for him to step in.
Just before we came to the interview, you talked about being in that class, that leadership and management class at Briarcrest Bible College, and just a phrase connected God's purpose with your heart. It lit a fire.
I know so many of us are always wondering, well, what's my call? What's my call? And I had spent so many of my years in worship and the arts, and I thought that was it. But when I heard these words...
I have sung under this woman's leadership. Amazing productions. Carry on.
Yes. So we were looking at a book by Stephen Covey called The 8th Habit. And the phrase that leapt out to me, which was my personal call, it was also an audible voice of God, was find your voice and help others find their voice. And I thought, that's it.
And that has been happening in ways I needed to be caught up on. You have been in Surrey, BC, Edmonton, Alberta, Montreal, Quebec, just in these recent months, April, May, and June. Tell us about Gather.
Gather is really about creating a beautiful symphony of diversity and connecting Canadian Christian women coast to coast. There's a huge gap that exists. We may not know who our sisters are in Alberta, in BC, in the Maritimes, what they're doing, what God is saying to them. And we need some kind of a mechanism, some kind of a way of connecting, so that we are encouraged to know that God is moving in this country in this time. It's so easy to look south of the border or globally and be jealous of what's going on in other places. But we have an opportunity to cultivate the Canadian soil, to mine the richness of what exists here. And when we gather women, when we have stepped out to risk everything to say, God, I believe this is of you and what you're calling us to, we are saying that it's important to connect coast to coast, one conversation, one relationship at a time. And why do we connect? Well, we want to offer women biblical teaching, equipping, mobilizing. We also want to champion a culture of support, that we're not competing against each other, and also that in Canada, it's okay to rise and use your voice. It's okay to be bold and not to always be timid, because that's the Canadian way. And we also want to call forth a national voice. What is it that God is calling us to as a nation? Women are 52% of the church in Canada. We also know that in the churches that we have, 80% of them have 200 or less members, and there may not be places for women to actually engage with their gifts in their truest form. So we're challenging women to think of their sphere of influence, to think of their churches, and say, what would your voice be in your sphere of influence for this time in history? And share your story with us, and we share our story with you, and together we get a sense that there's a bigger picture here. There's a bigger story being written, and we can rise to that as a nation.
Canadian, eh?
Canadian girls,
Amazing.
absolutely.
I just want to give a little backdrop here that you were co-chair of Just Give Me Jesus at the Air Canada Centre, 2006.
Right, 10 years ago.
16,000 people. That, I think Anne Graham Lotz, Jill Briscoe was there as well, but she confessed to being blown away by the response on that first night. What a wonderful event that was. But that was a women's conference. This is not that. This is something different than what we would expect. The mission is different. It's more personal. It's about relating to one another and connecting with each other, not just platform down ministry. And it's been going very well, Cath.
Well, we've just kind of put our toes in the water to see what is the need for women. We know that women are isolated. Women in leadership are isolated. Women in ministry are isolated. We know that more and more we have churches being planted that are co-pastored by a husband and wife team. And so women are pastoring. Women are creating a new culture, a new dynamic for the church. We need to gather. We need to support each other. We need to champion the work that God is doing. When we come for a conference very often and we bring in, a well-known speaker, at the end of the conference, the speaker goes back to their place that they live, and we're left here. And one thing that Gather can help create is presence across the country.
Now we're talking about Gather Women's national event. This is a first. This is at the Winter Garden Theatre in Toronto, October 1st, all day, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Right.
A packed agenda.
Right.
Will your 3 C's express what we can expect in that day?
Absolutely. You'll connect to each other.
1.
You will champion
2.
a culture of support, and you will be called forth to find your voice and also know that you're part of a national voice. We have great Canadian voices: Sarah Bessey, Idalette McVicker, Helen Burns, Ellen Graff Martin, myself, Stephanie Reeder she is pastoring the women at the largest French-speaking church in Quebec. We have Kelly Wood from Saskatchewan, who works with Indigenous people. We're excited to have women come, and I know that having been part of the regional gatherings across the country, any woman who comes will not regret it, and any woman who doesn't come will wish that they had.
You facilitated leadership development in Africa, in Australia. This has kind of been your heartbeat. But you see the distinct need of Canada, of Canadian women. That's what's driving this.
It is. I'm jealous for our girls, and I want the world to watch and see what God is doing here. It's nothing that we're doing. We know that when our 5 loaves and 2 fishes are done, we're done. We have to offer them to God and say, God, what do you want to multiply in our nation? What do you want to revive in me first? And sometimes it takes a person with skin on, the one person, the few people, or the many.
Dr. Larry Crabb, we both love him, don't we? He said the power to meaningfully change lives depends not on advice, but on, wait for it, connecting, on bringing 2 people into an experience of shared life. That's at the root, I see, with Gather Lead. And you have a curriculum that you're making available to those little gatherings you hope will spring up all over the country. They don't have to wait for you to come, Cath.
Right.
You want women to do this.
Yeah.
We're dying in loneliness. We're starving because text messages aren't the encouragement that keep us going.
Right, right.
We need to come face to face.
Yeah, I need it. I think you need it.
Absolutely.
We all need it. We need to find each other. We need to gather together and listen for his voice and listen for what he wants. I would not want any woman in the GTA or across Canada not to miss the opportunity It will be History Making Day on October 1st at the Winter Garden. We have gone to great pains and are going to great effort to create a space that is invitational so that every woman who walks in the door knows that I'm here, I belong here, this is my place.
You're wearing a symbol right around your neck of
I am.
what you're up to.
Yes, and Just One is our fair trade partner, and we have commissioned these necklaces for some of our participants. They signify the one, the few, the many.
The
and
one, the few, the many.
all are important in God's economy. We gather in circles, and we are just so thrilled to be able to invite women to this experience.
Okay, I want women to write down gatherwomen.com because you're going to go there to register. $69 for the whole day. Wow, that's amazing. And you have 40 words, one for every day. This is a spiritual challenge to take us to the event. Kat?
Yes. We've got words that you can pray over. And if you go to our website, there's a prayer wall, a prayer room that you can find those words and be guided in how to become prayer warriors, not only for Gather Rise, but for Gather Women and for our nation. We are all living in the Esther generation, aren't we? And we have a role to play at this time in history in Canada. We live here, and let's own that.
I love this. October 1st, Winter Garden Theatre, Toronto. I hope you can put it on your calendar. You know, you probably can guess where I'm going when I say Matthew Arnold. He was an English poet, a cultural critic, inspector of schools, kind of timely. Back in the late 1800s, he was influenced by Wordsworth and Keats. He said this: if there ever comes a time when the women of the world come together purely and simply for the benefit of mankind, it will be a force such as the world has never known. Well, consider yourself warned. Gather is on the rise. Kath, thanks for coming and telling us about it.